The prison was 4 hours away by car. Muhammad Ali sat in the passenger seat and didn't speak the entire drive. His lawyer kept asking if he was sure about this, if he really wanted to meet this man. Ali didn't respond. He just watched the highway pass by and thought about a night he'd spent 14 years trying to erase. A night nobody knew about. A night he thought was buried. But now, someone was digging it up, and Ali had no choice but to face it. The envelope had arrived on a Tuesday morning in October 1978. Plain white, no return address, just a postmark from somewhere in southern Illinois. Ali's wife Veronica had brought it to him while he was sitting in the kitchen, drinking coffee, reading the sports section. She'd placed it next to his plate without saying anything. Ali had looked at it for a moment. Then he'd picked it up, turned it over, held it up to the light. There was something about it that made him hesitate. Something that made his stomach tighten before he even opened it. He tore it open slowly. Inside was a single sheet of lined paper, the kind you'd find in a prison commissary. The handwriting was rough, uneven, like it had been written by someone whose hands weren't steady. 7 lines, that's all it was. 7 lines that made Ali's world stop. Dear champ, you don't know me, but I know you. I know what happened on April 23rd, 1964. I know because I was there. I know what you did, and I know why you did it. You've got 48 hours to come see me. Or I'm telling everyone. Cell Block D, maximum security, Menard Correctional Center, Chester, Illinois. Come alone. Ali had read it twice. Then he'd folded it carefully, put it back in the envelope, and placed it on the table. He'd sat there for 20 minutes without moving. His coffee had gone cold. The sports section lay unread in front of him. Veronica had come back into the kitchen. Everything okay? She'd asked. Ali hadn't answered. She'd walked over, put her hand on his shoulder. Muhammad, what is it? He'd looked up at her. His face was calm, but his eyes weren't. I need to make a call, he'd said quietly. That was 3 days ago. Now they were driving through southern Illinois. Fields on both sides of the highway. Gray sky overhead. October cold seeping through the windows. Ali's lawyer, a man named Robert Thornton, hadn't stopped talking for the last hour. You don't have to do this, Thornton said for the 5th time. This could be a setup. This could be someone trying to extort you. We don't even know who this person is. Ali didn't respond. I ran a check, Thornton continued. There are over 1,800 inmates at Menard. Maximum security, violent offenders, murderers. You're walking into one of the most dangerous prisons in the country to meet someone who won't even tell you his name. Ali watched the fields pass by. Mohammed, are you listening to me? I'm listening. Then talk to me. What happened in 1964? What is this person talking about? Ali was quiet for a long time. Then he said, Something I haven't thought about in 14 years. What kind of something? The kind you don't talk about. Thornton gripped the steering wheel tighter. If this person is threatening you, we can handle it legally. We don't have to play this game. It's not a game. Then what is it? Ali didn't answer. They drove in silence for another 30 minutes. Then Ali saw the sign. Menard Correctional Center. 5 miles. His hands resting on his lap started to shake slightly. He pressed them together, breathed slowly, tried to steady himself. But the shaking didn't stop. Because somewhere in that prison, someone knew. Someone knew about a night that Ali had locked away in the deepest part of his memory. A night that had no witnesses. A night that had no records. A night that should have stayed buried forever. But now it was coming back, and Ali had no choice but to face it. The prison appeared on the horizon like a gray wound in the landscape. Concrete walls, watchtowers, razor wire catching the dull October light. Thornton slowed the car as they approached the main gate. A guard stepped out of the booth. Thornton rolled down the window. We're here for a visitation, Thornton said. Muhammad Ali, he's expected. The guard looked at Ali. His eyes widened slightly. Then he nodded and stepped back into the booth. A moment later, the gate began to open. They drove through slowly. The inside of the prison complex was exactly what Ali expected. More concrete, more wire, more walls. Everything designed to contain, to separate, to keep people from getting out. Or in this case, to keep Ollie from leaving once he understood what he was walking into. They parked in a small lot near the main building. Thornton turned off the engine and sat there for a moment. "Last chance," he said. "We can turn around right now." Allie opened the door and stepped out. Thornton sighed, grabbed his briefcase, and followed. Inside, the air smelled like industrial cleaner and something else. Something Allie couldn't name but recognized immediately. Fear, desperation, the particular smell of a place where hope goes to die. A corrections officer met them at the front desk. Tall, broad-shouldered, face like stone. "Mr. Alley," the officer said, not a question, just a statement. "Yes." "Follow me." They walked down a long corridor, fluorescent lights overhead, gray walls on both sides. Their footsteps echoed. At the end of the corridor was a heavy steel door. The officer unlocked it with a key from his belt. The door opened with a sound that made Ollie's chest tighten. They walked through. Another corridor. This one narrower, colder. The officer stopped at another door. "Visitation room is through here," the officer said. "You've got 30 minutes. There will be a guard in the room at all times. If the inmate becomes aggressive, the visit ends immediately." "Understood?" Allie nodded. The officer unlocked the door. Allie stepped inside. The room was small, concrete floor, concrete walls, a single metal table in the center. 2 metal chairs, a guard standing in the corner, arms crossed, face blank. Allie walked to the table and sat down. He waited. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Then the door on the opposite side of the room opened. And a man walked in. He was thin, too thin. Prison had hollowed him out. His hair was gray. His face was lined with deep creases. His prison uniform hung loose on his frame. But his eyes were sharp, focused. And when he looked at Allie, there was something in those eyes that made Ollie's stomach drop. Recognition. The man shuffled to the table. His ankles were shackled. The chains scraped against the concrete floor. He sat down slowly, carefully, like someone whose body had been broken and poorly repaired. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The man stared at Ollie. Allie stared back. Then the man leaned forward slightly. "You remember, don't you?" he said quietly. His voice was rough, damaged, like someone who'd spent years not using it. Allie didn't answer. The man smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. "You remember," he said again. "I can see it in your eyes. You know exactly who I am." Allie's jaw tightened. "I don't know you," Allie said. The man's smile widened. "Yes, you do. You just don't want to." Silence. The guard in the corner shifted his weight. The chains on the man's ankles clinked softly. "April 23rd, 1964, the man said. "Louisville, Kentucky, 2:30 in the morning. You were driving a black Cadillac. You were alone. You were coming back from somewhere you shouldn't have been." Allie's hands resting on the table began to shake. The man noticed. "You remember now," he said softly. Allie's voice came out quieter than he intended. "What do you want?" The man leaned back in his chair. He looked at Allie like he was looking at something fragile, something that might break if handled wrong. "I want to tell you a story," the man said, "and you're going to listen. Because if you don't, I'm going to tell it to everyone else. The newspapers, the magazines, the television, everyone. And your whole life is going to change." Allie's throat was dry. "Who are you?" Allie asked. The man's smile faded. "My name is Leonard Pierce," he said, "and 14 years ago, you saved my life." Allie stared at him. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Yes, you do." Pierce leaned forward again. His voice dropped even lower. "April 23rd, 1964. You were driving through the west end of Louisville. 2:30 in the morning. You stopped at a red light on 28th and Broadway, and you saw something you weren't supposed to see." Allie's breathing had become shallow. Pierce continued. "You saw 3 white men beating a black man in an alley. You saw them kicking him. You saw one of them pull out a knife, and you did something that nobody expected. You got out of your car, you walked into that alley, and you stopped them." Allie's hands were shaking harder now. "That man they were beating," Pierce said. "That was me." Silence. Complete silence. The guard in the corner was watching them now, paying attention. Pierce kept talking. "You didn't know me. I didn't know you. But you saved my life that night. You pulled those men off me. You stood between them and me. And when they realized who you were, when they recognized your face, they ran. Ali's voice was barely a whisper. Why are you telling me this? Pierce's expression changed. Something dark moved behind his eyes. Because I need you to understand what happened after you left. Ali waited. You saved me that night, Pierce said. But 3 days later, those same men came back. They found me. And this time, there was no Muhammad Ali to stop them. Pierce lifted his hands slowly, placed them flat on the table. His fingers were crooked, badly healed. They broke my hands, Pierce said calmly. Then they broke my legs. Then they beat me until I couldn't see. I was in the hospital for 2 months. When I got out, I couldn't work, couldn't walk right, couldn't do anything. I lost everything, my job, my apartment, my family. He paused. And I started thinking about you. Ali's chest was tight. I started thinking about how you saved me that night. How you were the hero. How everyone loved you. How you were the greatest. And I started thinking about how I was the one who paid the price for it. Pierce's voice was getting colder. Because you saved me. They came back for me. Because you got involved. They made sure I suffered. And you? You drove away. You went back to your life. You became the champion of the world. And I became this. He gestured to himself. To the prison uniform, to the shackles. So here's what I want, Pierce said. I want you to tell the world what you did. I want you to admit that you saved me. I want everyone to know. Because right now, I'm nobody. I'm just another inmate in cell block D. But if Muhammad Ali admits that he saved my life, then I'm somebody. Then I matter. Ali was quiet for a long time. Then he spoke. And if I don't? Pierce's face hardened. Then I tell them anyway. But I tell them my version. I tell them that you didn't just save me. I tell them that you were there that night because you were involved in something illegal. I tell them that those men were beating me because of something you did. I make you look like the criminal, not the hero. That's a lie. Maybe. But who's going to believe you? A convicted felon who has nothing to lose? Or the greatest boxer in the world who has everything to lose? Ali stared at him. Pierce stared back. You've got 48 hours, Pierce said. Come forward. Tell the truth. Make me matter. Or I destroy you. The guard in the corner stepped forward. Time's up, he said. Pierce stood slowly. The chains scraped against the floor again. Think about it, champ, Pierce said. You saved me once. Now, save me again. He turned and shuffled toward the door. The guard opened it. Pierce walked through. The door closed with a heavy metallic sound. Ali sat there alone. His hands were still shaking. The drive back was silent for the first hour. Thornton didn't ask questions. He just drove. Ali stared out the window at the fields passing by. Gray sky, dead grass, everything looked cold. Finally, Thornton spoke. What did he say? Ali didn't answer immediately. He wants me to tell the world I saved him. Did you? Yes. Thornton was quiet for a moment. So tell them. It's not that simple. Why not? Ali looked at him. Because if I tell them, I have to explain why I was there, what I was doing, where I was coming from. Where were you coming from? Ali turned back to the window. Somewhere I shouldn't have been. Thornton gripped the steering wheel. Muhammad, you need to tell me everything. Right now. Because if this man goes public with his version, we need to be ready. Ali was silent for a long time. Then he started talking. April 23rd, 1964. I was 22 years old. I just won the heavyweight championship 2 months earlier. I was on top of the world. Untouchable. Or at least I thought I was. He paused. That night I was at a place I shouldn't have been. A gambling house on the west side. Illegal. Underground. I'd gone there with some friends. We were drinking, playing cards, losing money, being stupid. You were gambling? Yes. And if that came out in 1964, it would have destroyed me. The Nation of Islam didn't allow gambling. Elijah Muhammad would have expelled me. My career would have been over. Thornton nodded slowly. So you left. Around 2:30 in the morning, I was driving home. I stopped at a red light, and I saw them. The men beating Leonard Pierce. Yes. And you got out. I didn't think, I just reacted. I saw someone being hurt, and I stopped it. That's all. Did anyone see you? The three men. They recognized me. They ran. I helped Pierce to his feet, asked if he was okay. He could barely speak. I told him to go to the hospital. Then I left. You didn't stay. No, I was scared. Scared that someone would find out I was there. Scared that people would ask questions. Scared that everything I'd built would fall apart. Allie's voice dropped. So I drove home, and I never told anyone. Not my trainer, not my family, nobody. And now Leonard Pierce wants you to admit it. Yes, because if you do, he becomes famous. The man Muhammad Ali saved. Yes, and if you don't, he tells his version. The version where you were involved in something criminal. Yes. Thornton was quiet. Then he said, What are you going to do? Allie stared out the window. I don't know. They drove in silence for another hour. When they reached Ali's home in Los Angeles, Thornton pulled into the driveway and turned off the engine. You've got 48 hours, Thornton said. Use them wisely. Allie got out of the car without saying anything. He walked inside. Veronica was in the living room. She looked up when he entered. How did it go? She asked. Allie didn't answer. He just walked past her, went upstairs, and closed the bedroom door. He sat on the edge of the bed and put his face in his hands. For 14 years, he'd kept that night buried. For 14 years, he'd lived with the secret. And now someone was forcing him to choose. Tell the truth and risk everything. Or stay silent and let a lie destroy him. 2 days passed. Allie didn't sleep much. He barely ate. He sat in his study and thought about Leonard Pierce, about that night in 1964, about what would happen if he came forward. The media would ask questions, lots of questions. Where were you that night? Why were you in that neighborhood? What were you doing? And eventually, someone would figure it out. Someone would dig deep enough. And the truth about the gambling house would come out. And then what? His reputation would be damaged. People would see him differently. The image of Muhammad Ali, the righteous champion, would crack. But if he didn't come forward, Pierce would tell his version. And that version was worse. On the second night, Ali picked up the phone. He called his lawyer. Robert, I've made a decision. What is it? I'm going public. I'm telling the truth. Thornton was quiet for a moment. Are you sure? No, but I don't have a choice. When? Tomorrow. I'll call a press conference. I'll tell them everything. Everything? Allie hesitated. Everything that matters. The next morning, Allie sat in front of 20 reporters in a small conference room in downtown Los Angeles. Cameras flashed. Microphones crowded the table in front of him. He took a deep breath, and he told the story. He told them about April 23rd, 1964, about stopping at a red light, about seeing a man being beaten, about getting out of his car and stopping it. He told them about Leonard Pierce. He told them that he'd kept it secret for 14 years because he was scared. Scared of what people would think. Scared of what it would mean. But he didn't tell them about the gambling house. That part he kept to himself. When he finished, the reporters erupted with questions. Why didn't you come forward sooner? What were you doing in that neighborhood? Do you have any regrets? Ali answered what he could, avoided what he couldn't. By the next morning, the story was everywhere. Muhammad Ali, the secret hero. Ali reveals 14-year-old rescue. Champion saved man's life in 1964. The public response was overwhelming. Most people saw it as proof of Ali's character. Proof that he was a hero even when nobody was watching. But there were questions. Quiet questions. Questions about what Ali wasn't saying. 3 days later, Ali received another letter. Same handwriting. Same prison postmark. He opened it slowly. Inside was a single sentence. Thank you, champ. You saved me twice. Ali read it. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his desk drawer. He never heard from Leonard Pierce again. Years later, Ali would be asked about that night, about why he came forward. about what it meant. And he would always give the same answer. I did what I thought was right. That's all any of us can do. But late at night, when he was alone, Allie would think about that letter, about Leonard Pierce, about the choice he'd made, and he would wonder if he'd saved Pierce's life, or if Pierce had saved his. Because sometimes the people we rescue are the ones who rescue us. And sometimes the truth we're forced to tell is the truth we needed to hear ourselves.